everyone, I hope you're doing well. Thank you for stopping by. So in today's video, I am doing a arm wound that's more realistic than the other tutorials I have that will allow you to become portable, that uses lip gloss, liquid latex, and cotton. This is more in-depth and involved to get you used to using scar wax, so I hope you enjoy it, and let's just get into the footage. A reference photo to keep me mindful about where to put the fat up under the skin. I'm using Revolution Beauty's SFX Scar Wax. This one comes with a spatula, and I pre-made some fascia for the fat up under the skin. And for my adhesive today, I am using Spirit gum. Making sure that the area is clean. I'm going to go ahead and scoop out some of this scar wax. Now this scar wax does warm up pretty easy the moment I take it off of the spatula and begin to run it through the hands. You can see it gets very soft very quickly. I roll the scar wax into a thinner strip, and I like to keep my scar wax for wounds a little bit thicker in the middle and thinner toward the edges. And getting another scoop, this will be the other side, and I will connect these once I put them on the arm. And if you have a problem with any scar wax sticking to your fingers, just apply a little bit of lotion or Vaseline. Once you have your pieces rolled out and you do not like the look of one, you see it's very easy to mash it back together and get another shape that's going to work for you. Using a thin layer of Spirit gum, I begin to map out roughly the shape and the placement where I want to. Now, if you want to use a pencil and put in your shape, you can do that, but I find that it's just a little bit easier to do it this way in case you have a placement that begins to change. And sometimes it really depends on how the scar wax wants to act, the environment that you're working in. So I tend to just use the placement of the Spirit gum as a guide. And these are tools that I got off of Amazon, and they have been very good. I'll link that in the description below, but I've been able to use them with several different products and wash them and then not rust. And I go ahead and set those tools into the Vaseline because it's critical in order to smooth out the scar wax. I am testing to see if the Spirit gum is tacky enough, and it is. I'm not slowing anything down on this tutorial so you can see realistically what it takes to actually make a more of a realistic wound. And I get my two pieces laid onto the Spirit gum, and I'm going to connect those at each end once I begin to smooth it out. I dip my tools and anytime I use my finger into Vaseline, because you're going to want any tool and anything that you use to glide across this scar wax, and you'll see that it begins to melt into the skin. And if you have an issue with it pulling up or dragging, that's a high indication that you need to re-lubricate your tools. I continue to push this scar wax into the skin, making sure that there is a seamless transition. And I go ahead and connect both edges at the bottom. And I figured a wound was due to an injury, and so I consider my wounds in this way, how they're going to look, what injury could it have been, and I wanted those jagged edges in the middle and smaller rips at the end. If you would like to learn how to make your own scar wax, I do have a tutorial. Click this link above and it will take you to how to make your own scar wax for pennies. And I like a scar wax that I can manipulate the formula for the environment that I'm working in. And I just continue to smooth everything out the best I can with tools, going back and forth between the Vaseline and also my finger. The finger gives me a chance to feel any edges, and it also lets me feel how smooth the scar wax is going from the bulk of the wax to into the skin. I place my subcutaneous fat up under the skin, known as the hypodermis, up under and into the sides of this wound, because once it is sliced or it is injured, it will pull away and stick to the hypodermis layer of the skin. So I just place these in the thicker in areas, and I stack them in several different places. This is where you have choices to make, and I keep in mind that if this is going to be more of a realistic wound, that the more fat you have in the wound depends on the thickness of your body. So you see that my arm is thicker going up toward the elbow than it is going leading out toward the wrist. So the thicker pieces I place at the top and the smaller pieces into the bottom. Dipping my finger into the Vaseline is going to allow me to flatten those round balls of wax just a little bit, because the skin on top of this layer tends to compress it up underneath, so these little round balls that we placed of scar wax will not be completely round. They're going to be flat on the surface just a little bit, and I like to do this with my fingers so I can feel them melting in to each other, and I know when to stop, because it also has a small slight separation, and you'll see that you should be able to see the fat layer in these balls in different little pieces, but flat on the surface. And hey guys, I am not a professional. I do not work for the movies, but I knock into my designs all the time. So it is okay if you place something onto this scar wax, you get a dent in it, you can go back through and you can get that smoothed out pretty easy, finger or tool, just as long as you have some type of lubrication as Vaseline or lotion, you can get that smoothed out pretty easy. And here I go in with, I'm using flour today instead of a locking powder, because I'm not going to be wearing this for a long time. It gets me what I need to, and it will work for going to a party or a convention, but I want to take away all the shininess because I want to add that to make it more realistic, and also to get the shininess from the Vaseline to be absorbed with the flour. I go through with a brush and I just tap gently until I see the shininess go away. Using my alcohol skin Illustrator FX palette, I activate the yellow tone into this look, and I want to start out with a light wash of yellow because the fascia and also the fat up underneath the skin is yellow. So I test that on my skin to see the color I like. I would rather do it in small amounts than go ahead and saturate it heavy with paint. This gives me an opportunity to see how everything is reacting with the brush, with the wash of color and the powder that I've placed onto this wound. And I go through and I color all those little round balls that we put and place down for the fat. The brushes that I'm using today are from the Narrative Cosmetics line. It is the Essentials number 2 pack. I did have an issue with a couple of brushes not performing, and I contacted this company, and within 3 hours they got back to me with a resolution, and they sent me an entirely new set of brushes. I am using the blue in this palette to stipple on a variation of skin tone and color. This helps break up the transition between your skin and the skin that you color for your scar wax. Now this Revolution Beauty Makeup Scar Wax, it came a little bit darker than my skin tone, so I am going back and forth with 2 to 3 colors to lighten it up with my Onset Skin Illustrator palette. Now these alcohol-based paints, you can wash them with a little bit of alcohol. You can use a saturated brush to get more color, and you can tap away color with a little bit of alcohol on another brush to buff that out to make lines a little bit easier. But I do enjoy using these because it takes very little amount to get color onto something like scar wax. But if you don't have this, you can absolutely use the foundation that you currently use. You're just going to want to make sure that after you used a foundation that you powder it again like you see me do to absorb extra moisture. I continue to work in small areas just to make sure that this scar wax is indeed getting more closer to my flesh tone. I go back and forth between these 2 lighter shades and also the rose tone for stippling and speckling to make sure that the transition is less stark, less smooth, because your skin, you want it to mimic skin, and skin has different textures and different colors to it. I decided I want a higher, more opaque color of yellow, so I'll go back through with this fine liner brush and get that fat a little bit more yellow for this wound. Just play around with it, look at reference photos, have fun with it. There is absolutely really no wrong way to do this. The only thing I would keep in mind is that when you're doing a wound that's more fresh, there's less bruising and the blood stays a little bit lighter in color than it would if it had sat. So I'm going back in with this fresh blood palette, and I'm going and laying a layer of color in the very middle of this entire wound, and you can see how those colors start to melt and blend together. I just absolutely love alcohol paints. They are the best thing to do if you need something that's going to last for a long time and you do not want to touch anything up throughout the night. Occasionally throughout the look, I just take a piece of tissue paper and I blot that around this wound. Going back in with a deeper red tone, I want to make it more vibrant and lighten it up against the yellow that's in it. I am using stage blood at this point. It is a lot more runny than gel blood, but what I wanted to do is show you how if you had nothing but the products that you can get on the shelf during the Halloween season, such as Walmart or a craft store, that you can add more texture into this wound by using simple products. Now I don't want to cover up the yellow, but I do want it to have a little bit of blood onto it, so I allow it to drip onto some of the yellow. See that the yellow will not go away because it is alcohol based paints and it will take alcohol to remove it, so you can put another product that's water based onto it and still get the color that you placed in the beginning. A little bit of speckling, having some more blood around this wound. You want something that looks like it has bled for a little bit and has stopped bleeding, so I just blot that around the wound with a little bit of tissue paper. I am putting in a deeper color of blood because this wound is thick and it will require that it holds realistically, that it holds and pulls a lot more blood. I am now going to place a little bit of cotton into this blood, and what you're going to see is that you will get several different tones because that cotton is white. So that's one reason why I place the darker blood onto this in the center, and I press that cotton into the wound, and I just take several different pieces, what I see that fits its wound, just for a little bit more texture and to get out of the using so much scar wax. This is going to help you save a little bit of money, is to go and put textures in where you can see those textures, but you don't have to use all of the product that you have, and you'll see that it starts to absorb the color. Going back in with my staged blood to color this, now you can see that the texture has light and dark into the center. So here it is, guys. Here is the final result. This gives you fat layers and texture without you having to use a lot of your scar wax. Purchase scab blood or gel blood, and I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial today. If you want more money saving tips and tricks, or you'd like to vote on my next look, see sneak peeks or behind the scenes, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter. Those links are below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.